This is Shine On Policycast, the podcast that brings you EU policy updates relevant to solar. I'm your host Bethany. Let's get started. Okay, so we're back at Policycast with actually our first guest in Policycast returning almost a year later. Welcome back, Dries.
Thank you, I'm honoured.
So Dries is our policy director here at SolarPower Europe, and this season 3, is all about election year. I think half of the world's population will vote in elections this year, and one of the big ones is the European elections. So today we're going to talk about how that relates to solar. So a new segment on Policycast for season 3 is I'm inviting my guests to bring a prop and I have to guess its relevance to and significance to what we're going to talk about today. So Dries is very game and has brought a prop. And maybe you can show it to the camera and then describe it for the viewers at home.
Indeed, this is a prop. So for the non-English natives, a prop is basically a thing, right?
Yes.
So what I have here in my hands is a nice shiny object, a shiny rock. It looks like it could come from some kind of a planet far away. It's really beautiful. It is kind of grey, metallic color, and it shines in different directions. So this is really cool actually, and we have some of that in the office here. It is basically polysilicon. Yeah?
Okay.
So this is high purity polysilicon. This is the processed material that is the starting point of solar photovoltaic technology.
That's important to accelerating deployment of solar and solar in elections, because this is the stuff that we need to make it happen.
Yeah,
this
so
is the raw ingredient.
Voila. So you have quartz, that's the actual raw material, and then you process this into a stone, a rock like this, a shiny, high purity polysilicon rock, basically. And that is what you then cut into cells that do the magic of photovoltaism and generate electricity. So it's really cool. I actually took one home because I had I did a little presentation to my daughter in school. She's 10 years old, to her class, because there's like a recurrent weekly moment for a parent to talk about their work. And certainly the shiny rock that I said was straight from Mars caught most of the attention.
Well, I suppose it's handier than trying to bring in an actual solar panel.
Yes, exactly. But it's probably also important to say that this is produced in Europe, which is great. It's a European product, the actual high purity polysilicon. But then, of course, the next steps in the supply in the chain, the production chain for a solar module, don't happen that much in Europe. Yeah? So a lot of these rocks are being sent to China to then pull ingots, create a wafer, and then cut it into cells, and these cells you put on a panel, and that's then a solar module. Simply put, some of these cells do come back to Europe, so we have some module assembly then. But the next step in the value chain after polysilicon, so the pulling of the ingots and the wafers, is hardly present in Europe, and it is such an essential step in Europe's resilience and Europe's role in the supply chain of solar. So we have been fighting, and I think that's an appropriate word almost, really hammering very hard on the need for a really strong, robust industrial strategy for solar, and to create some scale, big, because you need size, you need scale, some champions, especially on those parts of the supply chain where we are the weakest, like the ingots and the wafers, so the step after this rock. And that will be, if we manage to do that, then Europe can have its place in the global solar supply chain.
Great. Well, thanks for bringing it in. I think it flows quite nicely into deployment, because before we talk about deployment, we talk about where we get our solar panels from. So, Dries, what does solar have to do with the EU elections? Why is it important to talk about solar right now, and why should policymakers care about it?
It's an important election, and elections are about democracy. We celebrate democracy and our ability to vote for the leaders, and that's it's important to remind us what a situation that is. That's a luxury we shouldn't take for granted. And solar is important because solar is also about democracy. It's a very versatile technology. It can do a lot of things for a lot of different people. And I think it's really important in the times that we are to recreate a connection between the political level and the citizens, the people. And solar plays its part in there. Yeah? There's, of course, a lot of important priority topics. There's no doubt about it. But solar is one of those technologies that can connect to people and connects people to a bigger agenda, the bigger European agenda on the Green Deal, for instance, also about our security, our prosperity. So I think solar has a very good story to tell about how democracy and democratization can be accelerated.
And to that end, we at SolarPower Europe have our manifesto. And I'll give you a minute maybe to pitch to our listeners and viewers exactly what the manifesto is.
Indeed, and I happen to have a copy just right here next to me on the table. Yeah? What a coincidence. So this is indeed the Solar For Europe Manifesto, and the first page is indeed about telling that story of what solar does for Europe. It ticks a lot of boxes. Solar helps with the climate crisis, solar helps with our energy crisis and our competitiveness crisis, which we also have in terms of industry and the risk of deindustrialization, which is real in Europe. And solar also works for nature, and I think that's also important. Like, we can restore nature and have solar play its part in that, help, for example, degradation of soils that can be reversed if you put solar on it. Also, solar helps for agriculture, because that's another constituency that really needs support. So we can connect and do our bits in most of the important topics of the election. And that's described in this manifesto. And then, of course, we have our asks on the other side.
Well, perfect that you bring that up, because if you'd like to check out our manifesto, you can find it on our website, solarpowereurope.org. But then what are our asks? I mean, accelerating solar deployment is kind of really up there in the manifesto. And what do we need to see from policymakers to make that happen then?
Yeah, so the last 5 years have been a lot about the 2030 policy framework, the Green Deal, the Fit for 55 package. That has been an amazing piece, an amazing accomplishment of European leaders and all stakeholders involved. This is now complete, or about to be completed. And it is, of course, then also fair that what we say is, okay, now focus on delivering that. This is an agenda that has been developed very democratically. Nobody has imposed anything on anybody. This was agreed by all representatives of the European citizens over the last 5 years after discussions and intense discussions, which is necessary. So now it is there. It is only fair, and it's very important to now also make sure that this is landing on the ground and we see those facts changing. And delivering implementation on the ground is not a passive and it's not a passive thing. It's actually important that the European Commission and the European institutions understand how much they can influence good delivery in the member states. For example, and that's what we focus on in the manifesto quite a lot, by making sure that all of the European funds and the financing tools are aligned with delivering on those climate and energy objectives. There should be no more inconsistencies in the direction of travel that funding awards for member states. No more confusion about fossil fuel investments. There should not be €1 going into further fossil fuel infrastructure as of now in the next Commission. And that really needs to be focused on the priorities of the clean energy transition.
And you mentioned 2030 there, and that's very much our day-to-day. It's 2030 targets, trying to get their manufacturing targets, deployment targets. But of course, the discussion's already now looking towards 2040, and we have the Commission's climate targets and goals pitched for 2040. And what's that looking like for solar, and what more do we maybe want to see?
That's when I love the European Commission, the European Union mostly, is that literally 20 days after concluding a 2030 package, the minds are going to 2040. And I'm serious. Thank God we have that forward-looking intergovernmental level, supranational level, because it really is ahead of the curve and it steers conversations on time to make sure that we have everything in place for the 2040 investment cycle. Because this is about investment cycles. If you think about climate neutrality in 2050, depending, of course, on the sector, but it's like 2, 3, 4 investment cycles, certainly not more. Yeah, so it's really not a luxury to already now talk about what the ambition should be for 2040 in a decade and a half from now. So we certainly welcome that. So we very much welcome just the mere fact that we're having this discussion, because that's what gives investors certainty that this journey continues. We have a 2030 package that's all crystal clear. We will continue towards 2040. This is a political priority, and we are preparing for that. So that basic message is of utmost importance.
Great. And with regards to solar specifically, and maybe renewables and electrification, are we seeing a good direction for travel then already from the Commission for 2040?
Well, absolutely, yeah. So we really welcome that communication. It's of course, yeah, always based on just a handful of scenarios. I mean, I think it's important that we have 3 options now, with the 90% emission reduction target as a central scenario. We do believe that in the communication, if you take a moment to read it, there's very good arguments to say, like, yeah, the most secure, the most sensible, cost-effective, and also forward-looking in terms of new industrial opportunities and economic opportunities is, of course, a scenario that is above 90%. So that would be our preferred one. But in all of the scenarios, solar plays an incredibly important role. To some extent, we always say, and I think it's also something that we are very open about to the European Commission, it still underestimates solar. It's a bit of a chronic disease, is a hard word, but there's a chronic underestimation of solar across a lot of modeling tools. And here I'm coming to the core of the message that we also give to the Commission. It is now time to improve the modeling capacity of the European Commission for projections and energy systems and all economy system modeling, because we keep doing it with more or less the same tools as we did the very first 2020 modeling in 2008. And Bethany, I'm going to tell you something. I remember that conversation.
Oof. I won't tell you how old I was in 2008.
Please don't. But just to add one more point on that topic, it is time for the European Union and the Commission in particular to develop its own European Energy Agency. It's incredible we don't have that. The US has that, the United States, it's called the Energy Intelligence Agency. It's just a professional agency who has modeling capacity, top notch. They know how to run thousands of scenarios, because in the end there is thousands of innovation that all need to be modeled and captured with sensitivities on some of the main models. We need to know in much more detail what the energy transition may look like under certain assumptions. It cannot be 3 scenarios leading to 3 different greenhouse gas emission targets, and that then provides an analytical basis for a debate. No, so that's a core question we have.
And how would such an agency relate to the work of DG Ener, for example, or whatever its equivalent would be in the next Commission?
Yep, that could be perfectly integrated in that, and we know that the Commission wants to do that. They've invested in modeling capacity. It's not that nothing happened since 2008, and I'm still curious to know where you were at the time, Bethany. But
reeling from the financial crash.
So they have invested in new software tools like Metis, and I will spare you the details. But there is quite a lot of space for further improvements and for professionalizing this.
It also sends a political and investment signal that we're really serious about this.
Exactly. So I cannot imagine anybody would be against that, if you see what I mean.
Next logical step in Europe's energy journey. So then to bring us back from 2040 and what that might look like to the present day and in the run up to elections. You're a proud Belgian.
I am.
So you'll be voting in the elections in springtime?
I will be voting, also for the simple reason that my country mandates me, so it's a voting duty in Belgium. I would vote anyway, of course, but we have voting duty, and that's maybe the topic for another podcast, but I am a very, very strong supporter of voting duty. Society has duties. We don't just live in rights only world. Nobody does. And education is mandatory. Voting should so be as well. So it's a very simple
which Belgians can vote in the elections?
So all the in the European elections, because we have
Belgium.
a combination
We'll
of
need another
elections.
podcast to talk about all of the different elections that Belgium has, but
so,
European elections.
So I'll have 3 ballots and that's only in June, and then the municipalities later this year. Yeah, so
democracy.
Yes, so everybody so every Belgian citizen, of course, above 18 years old. But if you're 16, you can also register to vote for the European elections, not for the national ones or the regional ones. And I think for the European elections, also residents in Belgium of more than 5 years. So they can also register to vote in Belgium.
And quick trivia question: do you know how many MEPs Belgium has? I mean, it's difficult because they're different regions, but
no, it's straightforward. We do it.
I'm trying to be charitable in case you don't get it.
Not everything is complex. I do. I think it's 22 or something. Yeah,
yes,
22.
Exactly.
I think we lost a couple after the Brexit reshuffling, and
surely you should have got some of ours.
Yeah, no. And it was in the news because I think the Netherlands got one more, and it was like, it reminded us of football games that we in the past.
Reopening old wounds.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of today's Policycast, and thanks so much for your insights, Dries, both on 2040 elections and how to vote in Belgium. And thanks. Hope to see you in Policycast again soon.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. This podcast is brought to you by SolarPower Europe. If you don't want to miss our next episode, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Shine on.